Welcome back, Year 12 Global Politics. Today we will be looking at diplomatic power, and what I will go through is the definition of diplomatic power, as well as how effective it has been in achieving national interests, and then how it hasn't been effective in achieving national interests. What you also need to be able to do is talk about how important diplomatic power is to states, because some states in the Asia Pacific will find it to be very important to them, while others may not see it as being very important. I think with China, it is a bit of both. They do see it important when it suits them and when it fits in with their national interests. However, there are times when they may not really care too much about it compared to achieving another goal. So sometimes it has been effective and sometimes it's important. However, there are times when it may not be effective or important because it may not help achieve a national interest or may not be important for them. So, let's get into what diplomatic power is. According to the VCE definition, it refers to the power accrued by states through their relationships with others in the form of alliances, alignments, and international standing. It's the ability of a state to influence other global actors. That's really important. It's about influencing others by the way of discussion and negotiation. So, for some states, it may help them influence others. However, there may be times where they aren't able to really influence others and aren't able to get what they want. In terms of diplomatic power, I find that students often get diplomatic power and political power confused. Diplomatic power is what a state does outside to try and form relationships with other states, whereas political power is what they do internally. So don't get those two confused. I know that that's quite a common mistake people make. Diplomatic, external. So the example I've got here is the use of veto in the UN. So this has helped, well, it has not helped achieve national interest because countries have been very, have seen this as being quite negative when China has used the use of veto. So although China has only used their power of veto 14 times as a, something that they have the power to do as a permanent member in the Security Council, they have used it a number of times for the crisis in Syria. And that has been, well, people have been incredibly critical of China's use of veto. The reason why China does this is because of their ideology of being a non-interventionist, because of the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. They don't believe that they should be intervening in other people's politics because they don't want other people to intervene in their internal politics. So they have used their power of veto in Syria because of that. There's a number of resolutions you could find at the UN when they have done this, and every time they have used veto, people have been very critical of them, calling them it's despicable, calling it dangerous, and, allowing, enemies and terrorists to continue. So people have been very critical of them. You could find quotes from Amnesty International or other international diplomats criticizing Chinese use of veto. So because they are continuing to veto, they may not really be influencing people through this discussion and negotiation. It probably isn't a successful use of diplomatic power because they really aren't influencing people in a positive way. It's not helping improve their international standing. So it's probably not, in some ways, they haven't really been very effective in, there hasn't been an effective use of diplomatic power. However, they have done some positive things with their space in the UN. In particular, in the UN, they have supported some actions. In particular, in 2017, they used their diplomatic power, so their power of discussions and negotiations, to help support sanctions against North Korea. The resolution was 2375, and these were economic sanctions on North Korea. They involved cutting 55% of North Korea's oil supplies, and they tried to, or were trying to, with the international community, try to, undermine the nuclear program that North Korea was running. So by supporting these sanctions and by working with the international community in this space, They were influencing others, were trying to improve their international standing, and were perhaps trying to improve their, maybe build some regional relationships. But you'd probably have to, if you're going to talk about regional relationships, you'd have to say that states like Australia or the US have seen it quite positively. So it's probably here an example of them improving their international standing. So yeah, but it is an example of them successfully influencing others through discussion and through negotiation. Another example you could talk about is their work in the Paris Climate Agreement, or just any discussion that they have been involved with climate change. There was an example in 2021 where the US and China signed a joint statement on climate change. So this here was both of them discussing and negotiating a way to both tackle climate change. They both pledged that they would decrease, will try to increase the average temperature rise from below 2 degrees and to limit it to 1.5 degrees. So by both of them working together to discuss and negotiate, we can see here a positive example of diplomatic power and China building a regional relationship and perhaps trying to increase their international standing. So there's a few examples here that you can talk about. One is obviously the use of veto in the UN, which has been perceived very negatively, as well as their use of supporting sanctions in the UN with other countries, or making agreements and signing things with other states when it comes to climate change. So there's a few different examples that you can use here. It is really important, though, to be talking about that they have influenced other actions or influenced other states and perhaps have achieved a national interest or not achieved an international interest. So there you go. That is diplomatic power. I hope that was helpful and perhaps showed you that diplomatic power is what happens outside the state. In my next video, I will talk about political power.